welcome. Today we're going to be talking about administrative tips for new staff. My name is Lindsay Leonard. I am a customer success manager here at Libris, but I've over time, oh, did I just mute myself? There we go. So today I'll introduce myself. We'll talk a little bit about customer success. Then we'll go into the critical systems you need access to as your Summon admin and to make sure that you're set up with those to be successful long-term with Summon at your library. We're going to talk about our knowledge resources and where you can go to find resources to learn more about Summon. And then we'll talk about kind of the two critical categories for work or keeping Summon working smoothly at your library. So there are kind of two components to that, your e-resources and your library content. So we'll talk about those. And then at the end, we'll just ask a little bit about Summon community. And I didn't put it on the agenda, but of course, Q&A will be in there at the end. So a bit about me. I am currently sitting in Kashmir, Washington. I started with Serial Solutions back in the Seattle office and have been in a variety of technical support roles. Most recently, I came from Summon implementation, so I see a few familiar names on the call from my time in implementation. And I live on a hobby farm, so hopefully no roosters crow. I picked up by the recording. But yes, I live on a hobby farm with all my assorted critters and my 3 kids. Yeah. And then a bit about you. So I want to make sure that the right audience, this is reaching the right audience. If you're new to, and taking over management of Summon, this session's probably going to have useful information for you. If you're an existing staff member who hasn't really engaged with Summon in a while, or maybe you've only worked with the front end and not the back end, and just need a memory refresher, this is a good basic session for that. We have other recorded trainings and that kind of thing that go more in depth, but this is really high level just to make sure that you have your systems access and are aware of your most critical tasks. So if you find this is not for you and you need to drop off the call, nobody will be offended. You just already know all the things. And then a bit about the customer success team. I recently joined. We're really here to help you understand your products and make sure that they're working well for your local library needs. And we do that by listening and, via call if you need to, or you can shoot us an email. We share information and best practices, sessions like this, or we do configuration reviews. We have a monthly newsletter, and we're really here to work alongside you and make sure that you enjoy working with Libris. It's a big organization, so sometimes if you don't know where to go, customer success is a great place to start because we kind of have our reach in all the teams to get you where you need to go. Okay, so now for the important information. No, I'm kidding. Gaining systems access. There are 3 systems that you need access to be prepared to do basically any task associated with your Summon instance. So first and foremost, the Client Center is where you'll need a login. That's the back office where you can manage Summon and your 360 services. This is where you maintain your database list. You can change logos and text, turn facets on and off. All of these things can be performed in the Client Center and by extent and with links to what's called the administration consoles, which is where the look and feel of your services are controlled. The other 2 systems here, the first being the ProQuest Ex Libris Support Center, are systems you will interact with less often, but it is how the support center is how you get in contact with our technical support. And then the status page is where we track service availability. So if there's downtime, things like that, or any planned downtime associated with like releases, that kind of thing, by signing up for that, you can get notifications. So how to get that access. With the Client Center, the Client Center link is right here. Most current library staff who have Client Center access will most likely have permissions to create an account for you and grant you access to the pieces of the Client Center that you need. And that's because best practice over time is that full-time staff get full permissions to the Client Center. So again, most Client Center accounts at your library will probably have full permissions to create an account for you. This can be done in the Client Center under Manage Your Library in the Client Center Accounts section. And a little later on, I'll bounce out and go into an actual Client Center to kind of put it all together. There are lots of little screenshots here, but we'll go out and look at the real thing here. When they go to create a Client Center account, they go to that section and they click Add. There's a form to fill out, but the required information is very simplistic. We really need your first name, your last name, and your email address in order to create the account. There is a contact type down here that I'll point out. This is information only. This actually doesn't have anything to do with permissions to the Client Center. It simply tells us who to contact in case of an issue with your services. We start with the primary and go to the secondary and so on. So just first, last, and email. Once the Client Center account is created, it doesn't actually give you permissions. You'll log in and basically see nothing, more or less, if you have not had permissions added. Once the account's created, in the very same section, whoever's creating your account can click on your name and go to the 360 Core Permissions section. Now, even if you have Summon and 360 products, it's all under 360 Core. And they can go ahead and grant you view or view edit permissions for the various parts of your service. Now, unless you're from a large organization with many different librarians who maybe touch very small parts of the system, best practice here is going to be to give complete permissions to full-time library staff. More limited permissions are appropriate for like if you had a student worker who was going to go in and do some work, or if you have somebody who's more part-time and only handling a single task. But for the most part, full permissions are appropriate. Now, this is a really important question since we're talking to new library staff. What to do if nobody at the library has Client Center access? This is a situation that comes up from time to time. It's okay, we're here to help. There's a link right here that goes directly to our list of chat services, and you can go to 360 Chat Support to get assistance during typical Pacific business hours, but we do have some early morning availability that's covered by our European teams. But you can go to chat, and the nice thing about chat is you don't need a login. You just fill out a form to say who you are to talk to somebody, and they can help you get access to the Client Center in the event there's been a lapse at your organization in terms of somebody who can log in and create an account. The next system you'll want access to is our Libris Support Center. This is where if you have a technical problem, you can submit a case. Our contact information is in here under the Contact Us menu, is both our chat and all our phone numbers. But you do need access to this account. There are registration instructions. There's a link here. But I want to tell you why you should register now and not later. The reason is that Summon only appears as an option when you're submitting a case if you've already logged in, because the only options for submitting a case that appear prior to logging in are those where we might interact with people who would not have a need to have an account. So you need to be logged in to properly submit a case for Summon. So getting that access set up now will make it so you can quickly get to what you need. And that's going to reduce the amount of time it takes you to submit a case and receive a response, because you'll get it to the right team right away. And the third benefit relates to our status page. The status page registration can go through your support center account. So setting this up is kind of your second item on the list. The order it's easiest to go Client Center, Support Center, and then status page. just to make it as smooth as possible. And then the last system that you should be set up with if you're the Summon admin at your library is the status page. This is where we track service availability and downtime. I put a link here to where you can register. If you've already set up your support center account, when you click that register button, it will give you an option to go through the support center, and you can manage your preferences. Most notably, you'll want to go into your profile and get email notifications for things like downtime. It's good to get that push information, so if there is a disruption in your service, you're already notified, you know, when you start receiving, if you get like patron inquiries about it. And I put a link here as well to a very quick 4-minute, it's the most concise video that I found that we've produced that goes through the status page. So it only takes 4 minutes of your time. I'm not going to go through it all, but it's well worth the 4 minutes. There are only 4 services, well, that you need to pay attention to. Well, I say only, you think you have Summon, but there are actually 4 services to pay attention to. The first, I put them in here, but the first one is CDI. That stands for Central Discovery Index. When you do a search in Summon and article results are returned, it's pulling those article results out of our Central Discovery Index, CDI. So that's what that is. You'll also want to pay attention to Summon. And then under 360, both 360 Link and 360 EJP, which stands for eJournal Portal. 360 Link handles the article linking portion of your services. Not all Summon libraries use 360 Link with Summon because you can technically use a different link resolver, but the vast majority do. So you'd want to make sure that you have 360 Link notifications set up. And the 360 eJournal Portal is the old A to Z list. Not all libraries use it, but all libraries have the option to use it. It's automatically created doing the same work that you do maintaining your information for Summon. So there's not an extra work piece involved in using that service. You just have to decide to use it. Okay, so with these 3 systems, if you find that you're having difficulty getting the assistance you need, or you just need a little bit of a walk through the process to get you from end to end, I do recommend connecting with your customer success manager. I'm not the only customer success manager, so I put the general customer success email here. If you email that email address, they'll connect you with your appropriate customer success manager to get you assistance with getting the system access that you need. Okay. So once you have access to the systems, of course, you need to know how to use them, which is where our knowledge resources really come in. Our knowledge resources are here at knowledge.xlibrisgroup.com. I'll show you at the end how from the Client Center you can get to these various systems. So even if you don't bookmark it, it's easily accessible through your Client Center. The Knowledge Center is divided up by product category, and Summon, of course, is fairly straightforward. There's also a 360 services section if you do use our 360 Link with Summon as well. And within each product category, there are different types of materials offered. So we have our product documentation, which I really think of as more of like what I would think of as a user guide. It's going to be a lot of kind of how to turn on and off this feature or that feature. The next category are our best practices and how-to guides. While our product documentation will be a lot of like how to turn this feature on, what this feature does, these best practice guides guide you through kind of the why and how you'd want to do something. So in particular, I'll draw your attention to one later about data optimization and updating your data. A best practice guide can step you through that process. We have our release notes. We have quarterly releases, feature releases with Summon, so you can stay up to date there. We have our training section, which is where I'm going to be focusing a little bit right now. And those are recorded trainings that cover both the critical tasks that you'll need to perform and the more advanced topics. So if you're looking to get started and you go to the Knowledge Center, the training section is where you want to be. And then there are a few other things here. Knowledge articles is really kind of like a Q&A of our most commonly asked questions. So if you are ever wondering and you have a question, knowledge articles is a great place to look. Now, all our knowledge resources are fully indexed by Google. So if you aren't sure where to search or even what product category to search, it's a pretty safe bet to go to Google and search for some keywords and then Ex Libris after those keywords. And chances are, or summon, chances are it will, through Google, it will kind of get you to the right place in our documentation. So with the Knowledge Center trainings, I do like to point out that Summon only has the trainings that you'd need for the Client Center, which is where you'll maintain your database list, and Summon and the Summon Administration Console. This is because technically 360 Link, you don't have to use it with Summon, but again, most libraries do. So you'll need to go to both the 360 Services product tile and the Summon product tile and the training sections to see the full list if you're using 360 Link of all the different topics. But if you go to Summon, both of them will have the Client Center Essentials, which if you're new is where I recommend you start. In particular, the adding and maintaining information about your e-resources training is a very targeted, pretty short tutorial on how to keep your information, your most critical information up to date. And then the last thing I like to point out is instead of searching, we have contextual help throughout our administration consoles in the client linked from the Client Center. So if you're ever just exploring or looking for a particular setting, using the contextual help will give you that product documentation about the page that you're on. So you don't necessarily have to go searching for it. There are these question marks that can get you directly to the corresponding product documentation. Now, I just want to show you, since there were a lot of different links in here, that if you get Client Center access, all of these things flow together. So here I'm in the Client Center. I'm not sure if my session is timed out, so if it does, I'll log back in here. But when you log into the Client Center, this is what you'll see, probably minus a few green check marks. This is a demo with lots of different services turned on. And up here are the most important navigation pieces for getting to those resources. So you'll see here that there's a Knowledge Center and online community link. And that will take you out to our Knowledge Center, where you can go to Summon. As I mentioned, Summon has a tile. And then if you're looking for 360 documentation, the 360 services tile is where you would go. If you need to submit a case, you can click the Submit a Case option from the Client Center, and you'll arrive in our Support Center. You'll note that when you go from the Client Center to the Support Center, it doesn't automatically log you in. This is because they are on separate logins, which is why they have separate registrations. So you'll want to go ahead and log in. You can submit a case, chat with us. We also have our phone number here. So here are our chat services. When you're looking for our chat service, if you just scroll down here, you'll see that you'll want 360 here, and you'll see that someone's available. Okay. Okay, so now let's focus on the actual administrative tasks that you need to do. I recommend before diving into these that you go ahead and get your Client Center access, get your systems access worked out, watch some of those Client Center Essentials trainings that are in your knowledge resources, in particular about adding databases. There are two main components that make up your library data in Summon. One is your e-resources. These are databases you would have purchased from a provider, ProQuest Central, Academic Search Complete, those kinds of things. You maintain a list of those in a section of the Client Center called Data Management. The other piece, and not all libraries will have this, some use e-resources only, are your library records in Summon. This could include your library catalog, your institutional repositories, your libguides, which is kind of a thing that gets set up during implementation and then you just don't worry about it because it's on a harvest, a weekly harvest. So it's not something that you'll need to do anything with other than just know that it's there. So you need to keep these two things, these two categories of data up to date for Summon to continue to work smoothly at your library. If the catalog is not kept up to date, you can have records that have been deleted or changed. If you don't keep your e-resources up to date, you'll see full text online links that don't get your student access to that article because you no longer have a subscription to that database, or maybe there are resources that your library has purchased and you're not getting the benefit of driving traffic to those resources through Summon. So to update your e-resources, data management is what controls that. So you'll want to log into the Client Center and under Manage Your Data, go to the Data Management section. When you get there, it will look something like this. You'll see a list of the what has been put in as the currently subscribed resources for your library. Actually, I don't want to go there yet. Let me just show you where data management is here. So under Management Tools, under Manage Your Data, the Data Management section is right here. Within data management, you can actually show all. I'm not going to because there are 57 pages in this demo profile. You can filter by provider. So if you just wanted to see what your profile currently has from Alexander Street marked as subscribed, you can hit apply. From here, you can edit the status. So subscribed is how you track it. There are some other statuses in there. Those are all explained in our recorded Client Center Essential trainings, but you can edit the status to set something to not tracked versus subscribed. Once you've kind of looked at your data management, the next step is to make a plan to update it. This may be as simple as searching for a database and setting it to subscribed, or it may be more involved. The easiest way to get a snapshot of your data, if you think the list looks even slightly out of date to you, is actually to run a management report. In the Client Center, there's a section called Management Reports, and you can run what's called a Database Details Report. This is going to give you a spreadsheet of everything that's currently in your data management and all the settings that are there. I have one I already downloaded here that you can look at. So it has the database name, but more importantly, it has all the settings. If you were to click on the name of a database in the Client Center, you'd see the settings. But here's a spreadsheet that just tells you which services they're set to display in, their status, whether you've put in a custom URL. So there's the default URL as well as a custom URL, whether you've chosen to include or omit the proxy, and so on. So this is the quickest way to look at a snapshot of all the settings of your data. If the list doesn't look up to date, all of this is documented on how to step through the process of updating it in the Data Optimization Best Practice Toolkit. And we do have a newer feature that's a pretty convenient one. If you have many changes to make to your data management settings, we introduced this last year, something called the Database Details Upload tool. And this will allow you to upload a spreadsheet of your changes instead of making them within the Client Center interface. So if you have a large number of changes, like you need to input a bunch of custom database URLs, maybe you want to add database subscriptions, which show up in Summon in the database recommender if you're using that feature. Maybe you discover you have multiple open access collections, but the proxy is being applied to them, which is inappropriate, and you want to turn those off. You can do all that with an upload instead of having to go to each individual database and input your changes. So there are instructions here on that. I'd only recommend taking the time to learn this tool when you have a large number of changes to make. If you just have one database to not set to not tracked, so get it out of your services and one or two databases to add, it's not necessarily worth taking the time with this tool. But if there's a larger amount of work to be done, this is definitely a convenience item that's worth the time to read the instructions and work on. So the other portion of your data management is your library records. And depending on how long you've been at the library or when you've come into administering Summon, I've encountered situations where it's not always clear to the library what they have and have not implemented in Summon. One of the easiest ways to check if your library has already added any systems to Summon is actually to look in your data management, because you will see a database that has your institution name listed as the provider and a database name like OK State Library Catalog. This can help you take stock of what is already in Summon. I want to call out that you may see things from providers that say library specific holdings. Those aren't the same. The provider name should be your library's name in data management. If you see collections in there or are seeing results for what you think is from one of your library systems in Summon, and you want to kind of do a health check on it, you can go out to the Summon Administration Console, which is linked from the Client Center, and go to the Content Ingestion tab, and you'll want to check for a new in the New Full Load Notification tab. In particular, with catalogs, you'll want to make sure that you see some kind of new full load referenced in here. There's a chance you may see something like on hold, please contact us. That indicates that at some point in the past there was an issue with a full load. But this is a good first stop to see if a new full load was recently completed. We recommend a quarterly full load. So if you don't see a recent full load indicated in the administration console, this is a good time to get in contact with our CDI team or your customer success manager to talk about what needs to happen there to bring your library up to date. I also recommend signing, and there's knowledge resources for working with local collections in Summon. This is kind of the index of all the different topics that I linked here. For different instructions, everything from naming conventions, how to upload records to Summon. It's all in there if you want to look through it. And then the last thing I recommend is signing up for your content ingestion reports, which is done in the admin console in the same content ingestion tab. There's just an ingestion report tab here where you can put in your email address. What this does for you is if you're new and you're not sure if there's like a cron job running, so maybe you're getting daily updates, this will send a push notification that a file was received for this particular content package. So if it's your catalog, it would say something like your library name dash catalog and tell you how many records were updated or deleted. So this is just a quick way to do a little sanity check on are updates being uploaded, even if I don't see a quarterly full load. If you find that neither of these things are happening, so you don't see a quarterly full load and you don't receive anything with your content ingestion reports after a short period of time, this indicates that there's some maintenance work that needs to be done there. And you can either get in contact with our technical support team, or if you're just looking to connect with general instruction, your customer success manager can help with that. Okay, so I do want to just backtrack here before we go to the next topic and show you where these various things are in the Client Center. So when you log into the Client Center, there's the blue bar here at the top of the screen. That's the e-catalog. So if you needed to add a database like Science Direct, this is where you'd search for that particular database and you go ahead and set it to subscribed. I'm not going to cover that here, but again, that's all in the Client Center Essentials training that's recorded in our Knowledge Center. Data management is under Management Tools right here. The database details upload can be done from this section. And then we have our management reports under Business Intelligence Tools, which is right down here. I'll go to the management reports because I want to show you one thing very briefly here. There will be multiple reports in here, but you want the database details report. When you click request report, it takes less than a minute to run. But this is a report that will only show up for the account that ran it. So if you're working with multiple people at your library on a data management cleanup project and multiple people want the database details report, you can either download the report and forward it to them, or they can just go into the Client Center if they have access and request the report as well, and it will run in a matter of seconds. But they won't go to the section and see a report that's already been run because it is per the account that's running it. Okay, so Summit actually has a really vibrant community. We have quarterly feature releases, and I put a link to the release notes here. There are a lot of links on the slide. I'm not sure if Scott will get through them all. You can request enhancements via our idea exchange. I really highly recommend getting in there, and even if you don't submit your own requests right away, you can see the requests from other libraries and vote on them, and you have 20 or 25 votes. I can't remember exactly how many, but you can use your votes to say, hey, I think Summon should do that, and vote for an idea. And this is great because it actually gives libraries quite a bit of say in the direction, direct say, because this is reviewed by the product manager, in how Summon how the development of Summon goes. So even in your early days with Summon, I do recommend at the very least looking through and placing a few votes on the idea exchange. 360 products are also under the Summon category in the idea exchange. So just because you don't see a 360 tile in the idea exchange does not mean that you can't submit a request. It's a category under Summon. And that it's been very cool for me, having been here for 10 years and then having seen the introduction of the idea exchange years ago, how that has just had a really positive impact on kind of the direct feedback from libraries. And then the last thing I recommend in terms of actively engaging with Summon is to join the Summon listserv. This is where libraries talk amongst themselves. I love around the release preview. Summon has a release preview that's done 2 weeks before each feature release. Watching the libraries talk about the new features, what's working well, what's not. Brent Cook, the product manager for Summon, is actively engaged on the Summon listserv. So there's lots of activity and good discussion going on there. And if you ever have something like, I use this system and I'm wondering how libraries are integrating that with Summon, those types of questions are great to just be able to go and ask other libraries who are using Summon. And then I did put a link in here to previous Summon webinars. There's some really good ones in there. So I didn't want it to get lost in the shuffle. That's separate from our training page. So it's more webinars like this than like the step-by-step product training that's in the training tile in our Knowledge Center. So I put a link there as well. We have some upcoming events. for Summon. Coming up here real shortly in June. It looks like there's a Summon Analytics discussion coming up, or presentation coming up on June 21st. You can register for that, as well as a few other presentations. The What's New with Summon is a great way to just check in with Summon. We have release notes. There are webinars around releases. The What's New with Summon is good to just tune into. Oh, and then there's an in-person ALA annual event. We have a booth number here, and there's a breakfast and other conference events. Let me get back to myself. So thank you first and foremost for being here. I put my email address in here as well as the customer success email address. If you have any questions about the presentation, please feel free to email me directly. And if you want to connect with your customer success manager at Ex Libris, or you're having just general issues, it doesn't have to be proactively, but if you find you're having general issues or concerns, please feel free to email the customer success email address, and we'll get you connected and talk to you about those concerns, answer, those best practice questions that inevitably come up that don't really fall in the realm of technical support. And most of all, Ex Libris is a big organization, so we can just help make sure you're talking to the right people to get you what you need in that moment. So, yep. Thank you.